Yay. All right. So I'm here with the famous CJ.
Mm, infamous.
Yes. Um, so I did want to get a small background so people kind of have an idea of
Mm,
because I really want to focus on the the amount of inner work that you've had to do to get
yeah.
through your journey to where you are.
Hmm.
But I think it might be helpful if people know what you went to school for, what you had wanted to do or thought you needed to do, just maybe a
Mm,
little bit around that and that which led to Facebook and then Roblox and then
yeah.
we'll kind of go from there. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds fine. I'll try to summarize it as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Um, so the the beginning is I was always a terrible student and never really had any direction in my life. Um, I went to the local community college here, MCC, and the only reason why I went there is because I didn't have to take my SATs. And once I found that out, I was like, "Fuck the SATs," and I'm gonna go there. So I started going there. I had no idea what I was gonna do, and I decided like, oh, I like working on cars, so I'll go be an auto mechanic. And that was the only reason why I went to school. I
Mm,
started doing that, and then in true fashion to me, I quit that, and then I was jobless for a while, and I was engaged at 19, so I was jobless, not engaged, didn't know what the fuck I was doing, and I needed some money. So my cousin asked if I wanted to go intern at the schools here for tech, and I did. And that kind of set me on
mm.
that first part of my path where I just fell in love with tech. I ended up going back to MCC and I actually did get a degree this time. And from there, it was just like every 2 years, it was what's the new version of what I want to do within this industry. And that eventually led to some years later getting an email from a recruiter at Facebook. And my initial reaction was like, oh, my friends are fucking with me. And I
Right.
completely ignored it. And once I talked to everybody and they're just like, yeah, I absolutely am not doing that to you. I reached back out, went through that whole interview process and moved the kids and my 3 kids and my then wife. I guess she's still my wife, my dead wife. Um, we moved out to California and I worked at Facebook for 3 years in California. Ariana got sick. My wife got sick with cancer. We moved back to Rochester and I was with Facebook for another 4 years or whatever it was. I think I was there for almost 7 years and then quit that because it wasn't serving my needs anymore. And it was definitely time, long overdue,
Yeah.
and went to Roblox. And then that was 4 years. And July 7th, I quit Roblox and I am now doing my own shit full time, which has been, you know, its own journey. So
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
high
And,
level.
and we'll get more into that. I
Yeah.
am curious when you say you were a terrible student and you didn't want to take the
Mm,
SATs,
yeah.
was that feeling of a lack of purpose or desire, or was that the anxiety? What
Mm,
was behind that at the time for you?
shit.
Sorry, hit you with a
Yeah.
hard question.
Yeah. It was it really came down to I just never was exposed to anything that I felt passionate about.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
like I always like growing up, like looking back, there were so many things that I saw that I started to latch to, but I just think there was a lack of encouragement in those things from just the world that I was
Yeah.
living in.
Yeah.
And I think the script that I was given by family and society and all those things just didn't seem realistic for me.
Yeah.
So it's just really came down to just a lack of passion because once I found it, it was like a light switch went off in me.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sounds like the way in which tech showed up in your life, I'm wondering if it showed up in a more you have to do this way. I
Mm,
don't think you would have taken that,
yeah.
the pressure, but like you said, it was just kind of it fell into your lap. You got to
Mhm.
explore it, you got to play with it.
That's
It
right.
sounds like your creativity and natural playfulness were up front and
Mhm.
led you into your career, it sounds
Yeah,
like. Yeah.
100%. But I didn't know that at the time. I didn't have that language at the time. But
Right.
that's like,
Yeah.
I mean, I literally built a lab in my home so I could play all night, and the nature of that was that I learned, but it
Yes.
was always play first, but I just
Yeah.
didn't have the language at the time for it. But yeah, that was
Totally.
definitely it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting now that we have that understanding and language and then
Mhm.
looking back like, okay, like this is why you succeeded.
Yeah.
Um and so then it really wasn't until you were working for a while and then you got the pressure from like,
Mm.
you know, what you're supposed to be creating and what you're supposed to be
Mhm.
doing is when the would more of that anxiety set in for you of like I have to be this certain way or create these
Yeah.
certain things or yeah, and that's when it killed the fun, right?
Yeah, because then it was like it was this pressure of like maintaining and growing,
Yeah.
especially within tech. I think that was just a perfect storm, because to succeed in tech outside of, to succeed at the level that I wanted to meant that it was every day. I would work, come home, eat dinner, be with the family, and then I'm studying all night. And that was every day for, a decade of my life.
Yeah.
And that eventually, like, then I got to Facebook, and then I was like, fuck, now I'm around people that are like, I mean, it's obvious just how much smarter and more driven and more accomplished they are. And then that imposter syndrome just choked
Right.
out any of the joy that I had.
Yeah. Yeah, that's rough. So it's also
Mhm.
it's like the expectations that you're
Yeah.
getting from top, but then also this comparison,
Mhm.
being in a whole different environment with all these different people that have, you know, crazy skill sets
Yeah.
and it can really suffocate the
Mhm.
joy and creativity out of what you're doing.
Yes, without a
Yeah.
doubt. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us your current
Mm.
ventures.
Yeah. Oh man, where do I even begin? So, I think it's interesting because, like I said, once I started Facebook, it almost immediately became, what is the next step? And this is like, it's happened quickly, but it's also been happening over the past 11 years.
Mhm.
And it was something that, like, I would have active conversations with my coworkers about, where we were told, like, you're here. At the time, Facebook was like the place to be. This is the pinnacle of your career. If you ever leave here, everything is downhill from here. Like, you will never succeed. You will never just feel as special as you do here. So like, there was such an identity put on us.
Yeah.
And so it's always like this thing of like, well, what is the next thing? What are we going to do after this? What does that look like? And like, it became this thing of slowly shedding away that identity, and again coming to playfulness, where it was like, okay, I really got into photography, so I'm like, I'll start a photography business. I'm going to start I'm going to start writing, I'm going to start all these different things, and it all really led up to what's happening right now. And that is the fashion brand, my writing, and then the multimedia company that I'm building around Grave. So like, we have a podcast right now, I have a book that I want to release, and it's just everything kind of led up to that moment. And everything that I'm doing now, all the skills that I learned in the play of while I was trying to figure shit out, are serving me so greatly at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess that's what I'm curious too, because again, as we get older and the responsibilities come in and
Mhm.
so forth and
Yeah.
everything, and even though you know the importance of let myself play with this, let me
Mhm.
explore this, like yeah, if you want to share like how you're able to get into that creative, playful mindset and like
Um,
get out of the pressure, anxiety mindset.
yeah.
Cause I'm guessing, I know for me, it's something I have to really tend to probably every
Yes.
day.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. It feels like highly specific to me. So but for me, it's this idea that, one, I had to work really hard to come to a place where I saw myself as a creative person,
Mm,
where I'm like, I could identify the things that I do that are creative endeavors, but I'm like, but I'm not a creative person
mm.
because everything I do is just complete garbage. And like the first thing that I had to get over was just putting judgments on anything that I do
Yeah,
and just letting myself like it's out there and it is what it is and it served its purpose for me. And then two things happened. One, I had to let go of the judgment of is it good or bad? And then I had to let go of the judgment of what will people perceive it to be. So like especially with my writing, because that's the
mhm.
thing that I've been most proficient in. I would get comments or like my mom would be like, "Oh, somebody read this thing that you wrote and like they feel this way about it and they wanted me to check in on you." And I was like, "Well,
Oh, yeah.
they're not they don't have any fucking idea at all of what I was intending because that's not what I was intending." So I spend so much time like, all right, maybe if I could just craft this just right enough, everybody will understand what I'm saying. So I had to
Mm,
let go of that idea that we will all perceive things through our own worldview, our own lens, our own experiences, and everything that somebody creates that we consume, it serves its purpose for us, very specific to us, and it has no bearing on the artist or the creator. So
yeah,
then I had to just let go of that and just be like, fine, I'm going to put stuff out there. Because for me, the act of releasing it is almost my way of releasing my judgment from it and not like
yep,
holding it to myself.
definitely.
And for me, creation comes out of emotion and
Yes.
that like healing and accepting, right? Like, I can't get rid of this fear. So, what if I just create something in the space of this fear? And now it's this external thing outside of me. And the more and more I like look at it or read it or just keep going over it, the more or the lesson that that sensation in my body has because it's like, oh, that's that thing. It's outside of me now. It's moved on.
Mm. Um, yeah, two things. The one thing I want
Mm,
to say is, yeah, I think especially because you are so in tune with your emotions and all of your work that you
mm,
do does come from this deep emotional
mm,
place that is not afraid to speak of the difficult emotions.
mm. Right.
Um, like you're saying, like your mom or a family member or somebody, read something, see
Mhm.
something, and that like worry,
Yep.
right, comes up like, oh, CJ's not
Yeah.
okay.
That's right.
Um, and so I think that like brings another level to creativity because not all I think a lot of great creative work is
Mhm.
super emotional, and I'm biased towards that. I think you're biased
Mhm.
towards that, but it's different from, I don't know, going to like a craft place or
That's
something,
right.
like right, and you're like shopping and
Mhm.
buying something, and where yes, there's still this emotional process in, the maker,
Mhm.
but it's a little bit different than, like, your
Mhm.
blog and clothing line and
Yeah.
podcast and things like that.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to, like, touch on that
Yeah.
because I feel like that's unique. Um, and I forgot the other damn it, the other thing I was gonna say. Oh, man. Shit, what was the last thing you said? Because it was good too, but anyways, but yeah, if there's anything more you wanted to say about, I guess, the unique hurdle. Well, I
Mhm.
think, well, I might be jumping a little too ahead,
Yeah.
that because you got that sort of like, I'm gonna say quote negative
Mhm.
feedback, I think like as far as your, well, I would say all of your endeavors, I was thinking of with
Mhm.
hopeless mope of like, this is how I feel. I don't
Yeah.
care if you don't like how I feel. This is how I
Mhm.
feel, and I'm gonna tell you how I feel whether you like it or not. So it
Yep.
almost like encouraged that kind of behavior in a way of
Yeah.
like, or even like with the podcast of being like, we're gonna let people tell their stories, and we don't
Yeah.
care if it makes other people uncomfortable. We're not here to make you comfortable. We're here
Yep.
to express ourselves and say
That's
how we
right.
feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. And we don't do that enough, right? It's like we're told to just bottle that shit up and like everything has to be in these neat little packages and compartmentalized and we don't allow ourselves to fully express without without somebody having to jump on it to solve a problem or to change that state, right? Like, I mean, so much of what I've learned from you, right? Like, obviously, like we've done so much work together, is like just let it be, right? We can't push these things away, and like they're not right or wrong, they just are.
Yeah.
And that's like something I, you know, I tell my daughter, like she's an incredible artist, and I'm just like, beauty is not a rainbow and bunnies. It could be,
Yeah.
but like beauty is truth and fearlessness and
Yeah.
that truthful expression. And the more we can do it, because it's interesting at Facebook, like while I felt so outcasted there, like I just couldn't compete, like I wasn't good enough, which a lot of that was my own shit. But like as I would sit down with people and listen to their stories, and I'd realize like, oh, they're fucking struggling and they feel the exact same that I do. Yet this dude is like the most famous person in our industry and he's still fucking struggling, or he has this thing going on in his life. And it's like, the more we talk about it, the more we allow people to just express themselves without needing to change their state and
Mhm.
make them feel better, then I think the greater our compassion and empathy will be towards each other, and the less that we will feel alone individually and as a society, as a
Yeah.
world, really.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is truly bringing people together as a
Right.
collective. Yeah. And I agree that it's a message that isn't the norm. I think it's like
Mhm.
changing and morphing, but
Yeah.
it can feel really confusing out
Mhm.
there because there's so many different schools of thought of like
Yeah.
we must avoid all negative
Yes.
thinking
Fucking
to
toxic positivity.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's a
know.
big one.
It
Yeah.
is. It's horrible. But yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. There's just too much. Like we're like we have commercialized uh we've commercialized, I think, like growth and therapy,
Mhm.
and we have commercialized emotions
Yeah.
to the point where it's we're still in the same state of like we don't have spaces where people are able to truly be themselves and to fully express themselves. And those spaces are different for everybody. Like I
Yeah.
happen to be more public with
Mhm.
my stuff, and that's not anything that I would ever think anybody would need to do. But like we all can find our spaces, whether it's
Right.
one person, whether it's a group of friends, whatever it is, there exists that ability to create that space. So we can have
Definitely.
that.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about like you didn't use this word, but I think this was a big part was like overcoming the
Mm,
perfectionism
mhm,
aspect um just seeing yourself as a creative. Like I
mm.
remember when I started doing this work and I was working with a coach and she was kind of like picking fun at me because it was like this artist questionnaire. And like on the questionnaire, I'm like, I am not an artist. I
Yeah,
don't relate to any of these
uh-huh,
questions. I'm like, if anything, I would say I'm a musician, but even that, I
mhm,
just can play an instrument. I don't write my own music. I
yep,
just, like, but I am
mhm,
not an artist. And she's like, Stacey, what the fuck?
yeah,
Like you, like, that was really hard. So, yeah, so maybe like say a little bit more about like that
mm,
journey of identifying as a creative person and yeah, even if you remember anything like specific, like I know you said just kind of like hitting publish,
yeah,
sounds like was like a big thing to overcome the perfectionism, but if there was anything more you wanted to say
mm,
there.
yeah, um, it's definitely a big one.
Mhm.
I think it really started with shifting my view of what creativity actually is.
Mm.
And that started, oddly enough, with my tech career. So I eventually became a software engineer, so writing code. And I started to have these moments where I was just like, "Oh fuck, like I am treating this so differently than just writing a bunch of words to make a machine do a thing." And I started noticing that like I'm spending time on formatting, on word choices, like it became this like movement of like poetry for me, where
Mhm.
I would like actually sit back and just look at my code and just feel so grateful. Like I just created something and I created something that was beautiful to me. And like I wanted to tell a story to the next engineer that was going to write that. So that started to kind of peek through this idea of like, oh, maybe artist has been too tightly defined.
Yeah.
And then it just became this journey of delving into different endeavors, photography, writing, drawing, all these things to deal with Ariana, my wife's cancer diagnosis. And it really came down to I had these overwhelming emotions and I had no way to get them out. And a buddy said, "Hey, I have an extra camera.
Mm.
I'm going to give it to you and let's go out." And then all of a sudden, slowly, I started to see these things that I was creating and getting them out there, but like more specifically, just looking at them and realizing that whether they evoked anything in anybody else, they started to evoke feelings and change in me.
Mhm.
And really at the end of the day, that's all creation is, and that's all art
Yeah.
is. It's just this vehicle to help somebody feel something that they need to feel in that moment.
Yeah.
And once I kind of like went into there and started getting even deeper into my childhood, because then I realized like, oh, I used to write, funny enough, I used to write Garfield fan fiction when I was like in third grade. I'll never forget sitting down at this computer. It's that old school. It had like the 5 1/4 floppy drives. Couldn't even bold the text or italicize it. Like, and I
Mm.
just remember being in the basement of my childhood home, just writing pages and pages and pages of these stories of Garfield. And I'm sure they were complete fucking garbage, but I just started tapping into that. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, what did I want to do as a child when I was free before all of this instruction and this coding in my subconscious of like,
Mhm.
this is what you need to do, or now like you need to be accomplished in order to be an artist, or like I just had to get through all those layers and I started finding all these things of like, that's right. This is what I used to love when I was what I would consider like my child was like who I was at my best. It was who I was at my most free, I should say.
Yeah. Jeez.
And I noticed people responding to it and that helped. Uh but I think there was just a moment where I had to let go and I had to just be like fuck it. Like I'm going to identify as an artist and see what that feels like.
Mm.
But it's still a struggle, right? Because I'm just like, okay, now I started a fashion line. I didn't go to school for it. I didn't go to school for graphic design, but like, how do I even belong in this industry? And I feel this sense of like, it's funny enough, I'm actually like writing this piece today of like the imposter syndrome now is not, I don't like, I'm not good and people will find out. It's, I need somebody in this industry to say you belong here. And that
Mm.
to me is the same thing as imposter syndrome. It's just a different side of it. And that's what I like noticed coming up. But if I reflect, I'm like, I didn't really go to school for tech either. I just like self-taught.
Yep.
So like it doesn't fucking matter.
Yep.
And but yeah, I mean, anyways, like I'll stop there. But that's a little bit of what kind of that journey looked like.
Yeah. As far as the last piece you were just talking about, it's interesting because I see that so much in like the therapy coaching
Mm,
world, right?
mhm.
Because the coaches didn't need to go to school and didn't need to get a license and do all
Yeah.
these things. And I totally get like, you know, the idea with the regulation with being a
Mhm.
therapist, so that people are not harmed, like I get that. Um, but there's so much not honoring. So what happens is as a society, we honor the degree,
Yep.
we honor the letters,
That's right.
the credentials, and like so that becomes the thing that you're after. And
Mhm.
that kills the creativity and it kills the actual learning. And I know that's what I struggled with is I learned how to be a good student.
Yeah.
I learned how to get A's. I learned how to be liked by
Mhm.
my teachers and my professors. I learned how to do school.
That's right.
I didn't learn a skill. I was
Mhm.
learning school. So then you get out of school and you're like, I don't I don't actually know what I'm doing because
Yeah.
that because it's not school anymore. And in
Yep.
the work world kind of helps mimic it. You learn how to please your boss
Yep.
instead. Like, what does he want? What is he telling me to do? How he says to do it, and this and that. And but all of that kills our creativity. So it's
Yeah.
not born of us. We're just
Mhm.
performing to a standard. And I think that's the one, I guess like I have a lot of different critiques, but like as far as the therapy coaching thing, because that's like my life, is that the therapy, yeah, puts this education on a pedestal, but it doesn't honor so much, like what you're talking about, like the
Yeah.
skill through the learning and the going through it and
That's
the
right.
embodiment of it
Mhm.
and all of that, which to me is way more
Oh,
powerful
yeah.
than anything because I know that the more work I did on myself and the more I embodied stuff, the better
Yep.
I became at helping my clients and had nothing to do with how many trainings that I
Exactly.
went to and how many, whatever in my head. It was about me.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%. And, like, it just is so I mean, it's such an understatement, right? Like, it doesn't matter. Somebody could be and, like, I saw this in the people that I'd have to hire, like, when I was a manager trying to hire people for my team. I'm like, "I could give a fuck where you went to school," because you could like, I had this like, the smartest guy in the interview room, but he couldn't function as, like, a coworker or a teammate or a human being. Like, he would just be visibly upset if I, like, ever questioned his intelligence, and it's like, if you like if there are things you want in life, and this is something that I'm like living firsthand, especially this year, you will only go as far as you're willing to learn and grow about yourself and your own shit and what you want to heal from. Because we will always be stifled by that. 100%. There is no way around it. You will always be stifled without a doubt. Maybe you could get a little bit further than somebody else, but you will hit your ceiling
You
if you
will.
can't learn to grow.
Yeah. I was just talking to
Mhm.
somebody earlier about something with my business, and I'm like, I know I'm in the way. Like
Yeah.
like there's this goal, and I'm like, it's like these moments. And so when you get really good at the inner work and so
Mm,
forth, like I feel like you can catch it a lot easier of
yes.
like, this is me. I'm in the way right here. I'm the only thing standing between where
Mhm.
I am now and where I'm gonna be. And yeah, so I completely agree. And that's also a difficult thing
Oh, yeah.
to accept. Like, I don't know if you remember like when you first
Yeah.
like had those epiphanies.
Yeah. Oh, do I remember all the epiphanies we had? Uh, 100%. And it's because it's if you're going to if you're going to go after something that you want in life, that requires a version of yourself that you need to believe in. But like we can't believe in ourselves if we can't even love ourselves. And like I hate that term. It's something I fight against all the time. But so what I mean by love ourselves, it's like to know ourselves, right? Like to me, like to love someone is to know them, to see them. So it's like we need to be able to see who we are and to see ourselves and to be able to offer the compassion in those moments that will allow us to generate that like internal belief that like we can do this. Like you said, like get out of the way. Let me just get out of the way and just play and watch what happens. And something that like you worked a lot with me on too is like let's not focus on expectations or outcomes, just focus on like now, like what are you doing in these moments, what feels like the right thing to be doing in these moments, and oftentimes like that's what leads to the greatest things.
Yeah.
Like there's so many times where I just feel like shit. I'm tired. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to sit down and collage or draw or write. But if I allow myself to do that
Yeah.
and to remove the expectation of what it's going to be and, get out all of those voices and just participate in the activity, I often find myself walking away from it just feeling wholeness really is really the only way I could describe it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you were playing with collaging a bit.
Mhm.
and and I and that was one thing I think I had done a little bit. Haven't done it a
Mm,
lot, but um I think that was one thing to kind of help with just jumping into something creative
yeah.
that didn't really require any
Mhm.
skill, right?
That's
Like
right.
there's like the fear of like, I don't know, it's like cut some
Mhm.
shit out and like put it
Yeah.
on a piece of paper and glue it in
Mhm.
random places. And again, like work on not caring what it looks
Yeah.
like, just intuitively put
Mhm.
things somewhere. I feel like is a great exercise
Mhm.
for anyone to do. And um I'll even do it like on Canva. I'll like look for
Oh, no shit.
like images and things like
Yeah.
that, and so kind of even play with it electronically and
Yeah.
so forth to just get in a vibe or
Mhm.
whatever, just to do something that's not like stuck in my head, because there
That's
is no
right.
goal or endpoint when there's a
Yeah.
collage, right?
Nope.
Like, so
Nope.
it helps you to learn what that feels like to just create instead
Mhm.
of, again, I need to get an A on this test sort
That's right.
of vibe going
Yeah.
on. Like, we want to kill that and get into the creative. So, yeah, when you mentioned collage, I wanted to like highlight that because
Mhm.
I feel like that was probably my first or earlier
Mm.
thing to allow myself to play with, because then I got into painting and I'm like, I don't know how to fucking paint, like, like,
Right?
so that was harder to like go
Yes.
buy canvas and go
Yep.
buy paint and brushes, and
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you doing, Stacey?
Right.
Like, why are you spending money on this
Oh,
when you
I know.
don't know what you're doing?
I literally bought every so I now I'm into
I
spray
saw,
painting. I
yes,
bought
I saw
every
you
single
post.
color. My daughter was like, "What are you fucking doing, Dad?" I was like, "We need colors. So let's just do it. Who cares? Let's just fucking experiment." But you're right, like collaging is so like I recommend it to everybody, no matter if they think they're creative or not, because like you said, like there's no goal, there's no there's no technique, right? Like with painting, you have to learn techniques. There's nothing
Yeah,
other than you just holding things or like on the screen, seeing what resonates, putting it down. And
yeah,
every time I do it, every single time, there's zero intention other than I have a whole desk in my office set up and all of the magazines, everything's just there. So there's no setup. I just sit down and I just start going through the magazines. And every time I walk away from it, I'm just like, oh, fuck, that is exactly what I was feeling internally.
mm,
And that's exactly what came out. I mean, literally, it could be like words and phrases or images. Like the whole thing just comes together.
yeah.
And you're right. Like it's that intuitive nature of us. And, like I don't do tarot or any of that stuff. But like to me, it almost feels like my way of like having things speak back to me.
Yeah, yeah, and you're really intuitive, naturally, and I think you
Mm,
can pick up on those messages easier, and I think I am too, but I
mhm.
had even more block, and I know you have your blocks with that as
Yeah.
well. Um, so one thing that helped me a lot was my coach that I was working with a lot. She used to be an art therapist. So it was
Oh
interesting
shit.
that I ended up picking a coach that used to be an art therapist.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so she was what kind of, really encouraged me, me to go down, do all this creative stuff. And so she would give me prompts
Mm,
to answer, like, what is, if I paint something or do a collage or whatever it is, like, what is it saying? Like, what is it trying to tell me? What, like
mm,
kind of like asking some prompts to like to kind of help me get through past some of the
yeah.
blocks, because it would be hard. And sometimes I would find myself letting whatever I create like sit for a few hours or even a
Mhm.
day and then come back to it and
Mhm.
then look at it and ask the questions. Or I would write a poem. I found to be easier
Mm,
for some weird reason. Like I would look at it and then just start writing a
mhm.
poem. And then I was able to get more meaning because I had now associated like words
That's
with
right.
it. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I think the walking away for a little bit and coming back is powerful.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that I don't do,
Mm.
which I'm like starting to like get myself to be more patient with that. because my first reaction is just like, I feel this thing. I need to fucking get this out. What is the closest medium to me? It's done. Snap a photo, fucking Instagram. There you go. And like now it's done. And now let me move on. And that's all well and good. And it's served me, but like we can always grow. And again, it's coming back to that place. So now I'm just like, okay, what if I create this thing? And then I just walk away and then I
Yeah.
come back to it. What do I see in it? Can I could I like push myself a little bit more? So like
Yep.
maybe I can actually start being good at these things. Like, is that, and then the question is like, do I do that because I'm afraid? Right? Is there still this part of me that's just like, no, 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 just get it out there because then you didn't put in a whole bunch of effort. So it's okay to be bad. Right. So it's like that judgment can come back in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, exactly. I'm glad you're talking about this because this is the growth edge that I literally have been working
Um,
on lately
no,
is waiting and
yeah.
holding the tension
Mm-hmm.
that comes from waiting. So I do that in my work. I'm like, I get a course
Mm,
idea or this idea, and I'm like, all
yeah.
right, do this, put it out there. And then I'm like, oh, well, a lot of people didn't sign up for that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I didn't really put that much effort into
Exactly.
it, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
like
It's
it's just
protection.
it. Yeah, it's a self protection. So,
Mm-hmm.
so my neck, I like giving myself. I'm currently in this space of giving myself an entire month
Holy shit.
to create something and
Damn.
putting high ass standards on it
Mm,
and getting it to a point where I can put my energy 100% behind this
mm-hmm.
work and say, this work is transformational.
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, like it's, I'm working on it, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
know what I do is transformational. I mean, I know
Right.
you would attest to that. I know anybody that works
100%.
with me would attest to that. But
Yeah.
again, it's back to me getting in my own way
Yes.
of I need to fully and 100% of the cells
Mm-hmm.
in my body need to fully do this. So therefore I can't hot potato it. I think that's what
Yep.
what you're
That's a good
talking about.
term. I
Yeah, I
like
think
that
that's what my
one.
coach would, she's like, you're hot potatoing,
Yep.
oh, we get an idea
Yep.
because we can't tolerate it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and it almost like you turn it into a task. Like, okay, I did the collage and I did
Yep.
this and then I got it done and it's out in the world. I did it. So now it turns into a task again, a
Yeah.
chore, an assignment,
Yep.
instead of, I mean, yes, it still benefits, like you still, were able to face and feel and,
Mm-hmm.
the emotional stuff. It's not like, but like we're saying, like this is the next step on
Yeah.
like the journey of refinement, to really like sit with the tension of it, because that's when the imposter or, like,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, if we hot potato it and just get it out in the world, we don't have to sit with the it's not good enough, what
That's right.
about, right? Because it's gonna come and we need
Mm-hmm.
to, if you want to fully energetically back your work, you need to deal with that.
Yeah.
um Otherwise you're going to deal with it probably with a troll or
Yeah.
somebody else,
Oh, exactly.
right?
Yeah. And
Oh,
that fucking sucks. Like I've definitely had that with Hopeless Mope. And like to me, Hopeless Mope is it is the thing that I've spent the most time with, I think.
yeah.
It started as one thing and I've actually, because of the transformation that I've had this year
Hmm.
and pushing on my growth edges, like I mean just the I mean that's like could be a whole hour of like how this whole year has transformed me and it's been painful, really fucking painful to have to, but again, I've had to sit, like physically sit in this pain of my grief or my anger or just all these like beliefs that I've had for so long and trying to tear them down. And creatively, like that's Hopeless Mo, but
Yeah.
it is so transforming now into something that was so much bigger than I ever thought it would be. That one conversation that you and I both had about like, hey, what if you started a fashion brand? Like that moment into this moment now, it's just completely different. It's not different, it completely evolved,
Yeah.
and it's evolved with me.
Yes.
And it's now, and I think that's where I'm like this. what's that like the swampy
Yes.
part, the swampy feminine,
Yeah.
which like that really stuck with me,
Yeah.
is now just sitting here being like, oh, we need somebody who we feel like has the credentials to say
Mm,
you're accepted and this is good.
yeah.
Right. And like I feel this pull of being so desperate for that
Yes.
because I've put so much time into this new evolved brand and I
Yeah.
literally quit my high paying tech job
Right.
to be like, I'm going all in on myself. Somebody validate me and make me feel good, please. I want to feel
Right.
pretty, please.
Yeah.
Like, so it's definitely like pushing up against that edge, and it is not
Definitely.
comfortable at all.
Um, I remember my question that I had
Okay,
forgotten before
awesome.
because I think you touched on it again. So I remember when you were afraid that growing and
Mm-hmm.
healing meant
That's
you would
right.
lose your creative edge.
100%.
So yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. Sorry, I'm like so
Yeah.
excited I remembered
Yeah.
because it was a juicy question and I remember I'm like,
Yeah.
it was a good one.
Man, that is, it's interesting. I obviously don't share that belief now. But it was so entrenched in me, and I think it's this like common trope in society, right? Of like the struggling artist, or
Yes.
the all these greats that we hear about their stories, and like fucking, he cut his ear off or like
Right.
killed
Yeah.
himself, or like
Yeah.
Edgar Allan Poe had like the most horrific fucking life. And
Right.
while I think art can come from that, I think there is I think there is so much more potential when we can grow ourselves, because like what you used to say to me was just like, healing and not having these anxious thoughts is not going to remove your creativity, it's going to unhinder your creativity. And I knew it, I understood it, but to
Yeah.
feel it is whole different, because
Yeah.
I like, for one, I this whole year has been just so transformational, and I feel like I am now on the precipice of being on the other side of my grief, which has been a very, very heavy thing for me. And like life has just so changed into the thing that I wanted it to be. And to actually have it feels very heavy. But what I've realized is like I have so many moments of just pure gratitude and gratefulness and joy and peace and love, but I still have all of those parts of me that hurt and feel all these other things where my creativity and my art has come from. So it's
Mm,
not that I lost them, it's that now I get to experience all of these things, and I get to let those anxious thoughts go away, and I can create more powerfully in those emotions, because like we don't fundamentally change who we are.
right.
We grow and we heal, and we our capacity, I believe, like, is the word that we used a lot when we first started working on
Yeah.
my grief, was like, your grief stays, your capacity grows.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like now we can hold ourselves. And which, interestingly enough, I don't want to take up too much time, but I didn't tell you this yet.
No,
So I
go ahead.
had my somatic therapy session last week, and this so the background here is the start of me learning to love myself and show up myself started in your office, like, I don't know, 5 years ago, whatever the fuck it was. The first time I ever told myself I could love myself was in your office, and I'll never forget that moment,
Mm,
like when we were
me
processing
either.
it.
Oh my
You
gosh.
remember
Yeah.
that?
That was
It's
so
fucking
powerful.
crazy.
It it was like and all these positive thoughts just like kept
Yes,
coming to you and you were just
all the time.
like mind blown. Like
Yeah.
each positive thought that was coming in
Mhm.
was like I could feel I felt it coming off your
Yeah.
body. Like it was insane. It
It
was
was
insane.
like, it was such a transformation, and I even went home that day, and Ariana was like the only time she ever commented on like all the work that I put it in. She's like, "I see you. I can't believe you're doing it. I'm so proud of you."
Wow.
That was the only time she ever did, and it was after that day.
Wow.
Um, so like that started it. So now last week I'm in the office. So I've been doing somatic therapy, which is just the therapy on the body, essentially body sense. And she asked me this question of like deserving, right? Because now I started to put all these judgments of like, am I deserving of this life?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because, for essentially everything I've ever wanted, I now have.
Yep.
And I started realizing like, oh, there's all these judgments. I've realized that I'm putting judgments on what I deserve and what I don't deserve, instead of just saying it is what it is and
Yep.
to enjoy it. And then there was some line of questioning that she asked me, and I tried to answer and I just fucking crumbled and I couldn't get the words out. And I started crying like a little baby. And I just like doubled over. And what finally came out was in that moment, there's this idea that has been running through my head the past month or so where when the way that the world used to be for me, especially after Ariana died, everything was black and white. And there was a woman that I interviewed on the podcast who put this into language for me. And she was like, and slowly the edges started to fill with color again. And then over time the world became full color. And that imagery really stuck with me because it was everything that I was feeling that I couldn't communicate. I didn't have the words. And I've been thinking about this, how I feel like I'm starting to see color again.
Mm.
And for me, the word was numbness, but I think this is a better illustration. So in the moment when she asked me that, what started to come up was the words, I am now fully capable of showing up for myself and to hold myself and to
Mm.
trust myself.
Mm.
And then I started having these really vivid images because in this therapy, I don't know what's happening, but like I've been having like almost psychedelic experiences is the only way I can describe it. Like I go into these weird meditative states. My whole body, I saw my past body, which was like mostly black and white with just a tiny bit of color on my right side. And then I was seeing myself in the present and it was mostly color. And there was a tiny bit on my left torso that was black and white. And these were just a few parts left. The boy,
Mm.
and there was one other part. And all of a sudden, like as I was getting these words out after like 20 minutes of just crying and crying and crying and like just willingly staying in this pain, the color completely overtook the black and white and my entire body went full color. And for the first time in my life, I was like, oh, I got me. Like
Wow.
I'm okay. In every part, all the parts, all the parts that you and I like worked on, every single one of them were like, we're in unison, we're one body, we're moving forward into the world. And then it didn't stop there. Then all of a sudden I was like, what the fuck is going on? My entire chest cavity started to open up and I felt my heart completely open up. And then I felt all this energy coming out from me and I felt it circling around me and my entire body started vibrating. And the therapist, she asked, she's like, can I, put my hands on you? And she, was doing these things to kind of cue like some of the somatic stuff. And we finished and she was like, I don't know what was happening. She's like, but I could feel buzzing coming off of you. And I
Mm.
didn't tell her any of that. Like it was just fucking crazy. It was like I literally healed all my parts. Obviously I still have struggles, but like it
Yeah.
was like the finishing or the
Yeah.
completion of that cycle of like what you and I started all those years
Wow.
ago.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. I just want to also like side note, I don't think I just want to like say you have a gift for being a therapy client that most people don't have. I guess I just want to like disclose that
Yeah.
because if people are like, what the fuck? Like, I don't experience that in therapy. I've never had that. So I just want to like say that like
Yeah.
what you experience is not the norm for
Yeah.
most people.
For me,
Just for
it's
like,
normal, but
wait, so
yeah.
that's why I wanted to say that for like anyone listening that's like, what the
Yeah.
fuck? Like, or if they want to be like, oh, my therapist must suck. Like, I don't have these like transformational experiences. There
Mm,
is something very unique about your
mm,
ability to just go in and process and be with your
mm.
emotions and do all that. And, whether it's your astrological chart or whatever, anything about you, it's just, um,
Mm.
in that way, you're a very like easy client to work
Yeah.
with because you don't need any prompting.
Mhm.
Like it's just kind of like here or like barely any prompting. And then you just like take a prompt and you're just like
Mm.
go with it, and then like just like all this like magical shit starts
Yeah.
happening. So I just wanted to like say that if people are
That's a
listening,
good
like
point.
what the fuck, because I know like that's your normal experience,
Yeah,
but
that's
that
true.
is definitely not the normal
Okay.
experience for most people.
That's awesome.
So if you're like for like if people are like talking about their therapy sessions and you're like what do you mean you're not like
Yeah.
that? That's why like not everybody's you. Okay.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
But wow, that's amazing. It was like a whole like
Mhm.
obviously I was thinking of like Wizard of Oz, like,
Yeah.
from the black and white
Mhm.
to the full Technicolor and
Yep.
like the big reveal and yeah, like it's like a whole new era, right? Like I
Yeah.
guess you can think about it like black and white TV versus color,
Mhm.
like it's almost like yeah, so that the timing of that is so cool. Sorry, I get so
It's wild,
excited.
right?
Right? Because yeah, like stepping into this new life and
Yeah.
yeah, I know we only have a little bit left, but I do want to
Yeah.
ask,
Yeah.
like you said, now you have everything you want
Yeah.
and you knew that that's where your life was going,
Yep.
but I know you also had guilt.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, we don't spend a whole lot of time on it, but I
Yeah.
thought that that might be because guilt is a huge thing that
Mhm.
a lot of people struggle with, especially as they're growing and changing. And it's yeah, like kind of like the deserving word that you're talking about,
Yeah.
like said, that's probably one of the biggest blocks that I think that get in the way for
Yeah.
people is because they feel guilty and then hold themselves back. So if you want to like,
Mm. Yeah.
share a little bit, I know again that's probably a whole nother hour, but like
Yeah.
share a
No,
little
no,
bit
that's
about
fine.
that.
Yeah, because that is a huge key component, right? This is all like very new and everything I'm experiencing is new. Literally, my whole life is completely different. And while I don't necessarily recommend that for everybody, um, it has brought up an interesting experience of being like my emotional system being like, well, what the fuck is going on? Because like we like at first it was like, oh, we're cool if you want to change careers, but then it's like, oh, you're doing this thing now. Oh, and you're doing this. Like, can we just? Oh, and you're smiling now. What is smiling? Like, can we just take a break? Just take a breather, please. So in the beginning, like I said, it was many years leading up to this, but this was the year that everything changed, and I made one decision that set off a chain reaction of everything to bring me to here. And um I made that decision and then another decision happened where like all these circumstances started to show up that at first I took as like really painful. So my work situation changed where with Roblox where they're just like I started to see the writing on the wall. Oh, they don't want remote employees. I'm a
Mm,
remote employee. And I remember you and I talking about this because I always had this plan to leave and to go do these things full
yeah,
time, but there's always that guilt. How could I do that? How could I leave a career that is paying for everything that my kids need and more and everything
yeah,
that I want? Like, who's so fucking dumb that they would do that to take on this risk? And my metrics growing up were be make money and have a influential job and you are successful. That's all I was given.
yeah,
Right? So to go against that was extremely difficult. But once I took a step back and realized, oh, whatever it is, the universe or Ariana or somebody is showing me, hey, like I know you're not going to take action. So like I'm going to help nudge you along a little bit.
yeah.
And and then it was about 3 months of really like deep processing and it was so fucking painful. It was one, it was getting over that guilt of am I hurting my children by giving up this job?
Mhm,
So then it became like, okay, how do I think about money? How do I handle money? How do I
yeah.
deal with money? How do I deal is my identity because I hate myself so much. My identity is, oh, I'm a high earner. So then I can at least provide value to
Mm,
people and then they could love me because I can provide for them. That was an actual thought in my head where I felt like I had no other value in my life other than that. You know,
yeah,
I wasn't good enough, I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't good looking enough, I wasn't strong enough, like all of it. And I had to work through all that to get to a place where it was like, yeah, that metric no longer serves me. And again, it was like therapy and
yeah.
processing and using the creativity and trying to see what my life could become. And then it was the guilt of feeling like, why me?
Mm,
Why should I be somebody who has the opportunity to do this? Right? Like, what is so special about me that I'm going to quit my career that I've had for the last 20 years and I'm going to go pursue these dreams, which on paper are kind of laughable because a million people do it every day. Like, oh, I'm going to start a clothing brand. Oh, I'm going to start a podcast. Oh, I'm going to be a writer. Like,
Mhm.
I just happen to be in these things that are just a fucking meme at this point,
Right.
you know? So then, then once I worked through that, I started to shift my thinking into, or I should say, as I was like in the depths of this, there were thoughts that came to me. There were things and images and sensations that came to me that were, if I don't take this opportunity, right? Because my
Mhm.
life now is not about, my life now is about serving the communities that I've been thrusted into, the widow community. It's like creating spaces for people to process and to feel these things. Like everything I do now is to serve that end.
Yes.
And the thought became, if I don't take this opportunity, then I'm wasting the resources and the opportunities that I was given. And then
Yes.
I don't actually care. And I just want to serve myself. And
Right.
that
Yeah.
like that helps shift in my thinking to like, oh right. Like this isn't that I'm deserving of something. This is just I'm an entity and
Mhm.
I'm feeling this passion and I'm given these opportunities.
Yep.
So let me try it. Just fucking
Yeah.
try it. I could always go get a job in tech again, you
Right.
know? So let me just try it. So then that started to free me up
Yeah.
to then to the point
That's
where
awesome.
everything started to open up when I was like, I'm doing it. I made
Yeah.
the decision like 3 or 4 months before I quit, or 3 months, whatever it was. And literally, I'm telling you, Stacey, everything started opening up. Connections started coming into my life. People that are like so important to my life now came into my life, and like opportunities came. I took the kids on that trip to Europe to connect with them. And like it's just, I literally feel like my life is a movie right now.
Well, it
And
kind
all
of
I did
is.
was say yes, and that's all I keep doing is saying yes. Yes, I'm gonna do this. Yes, I didn't used to be like this, but I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And it completely changed everything.
It's
Literally.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you knew this was going to happen
I think
too.
so. I did.
Um,
Somewhere inside I did.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, like, so it's just cool to like finally own it. Like you had to,
Mm.
again, I think you said like your nervous system. It's like you
Oh
had to
yeah.
prepare your nervous system
Uh-huh.
to get to this point where the yes was fully embodied
Correct.
because of the guilt before,
That's right.
right? That we are just talking about it. The yes wasn't fully embodied. It could be like
Yeah.
yes, but right,
Yep.
like there was this resistance to the yes, so we can't actually receive
Right.
until it's that full body yes, and it's not based off of what we want in our head. It's what
Exactly.
our system can actually
Mm-hmm.
handle. And so if you haven't been doing all this work,
Yeah. That's right.
to then the yes wouldn't have
Correct.
it, brought all these things
Yeah.
your way,
Yeah.
because it was the power of the embodiment
Mm-hmm.
of the yes that
Yeah.
did it, which I know might sound a little wacko, but um I
But we
believe
have to feel
that.
that, right? Like the thing that stuck, one of the things that stuck with me the most, and I do this all the time with other people, that you would always ask me is like, what's the percentage of cells in your body that believe that?
Yeah.
Right. And that became my metric.
Yeah.
What is the growth of that percentage of cells that started to believe it? And
Yeah.
once it tipped over 50%, all of a sudden, like then it became like, oh, the fear doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The yes is real
Yeah.
and it's going to happen. And
Yeah.
I just have to try, because at the end of the day, like like you said, your nervous system won't know until you just jump in.
You're right.
You
Yeah.
just have to experience it to
Yeah.
understand it.
Yeah.
You have to burn your ships, right?
Yeah.
It's like you have to. Yeah.
Oh, good. So good. Okay.
Mhm.
I'm so excited. All right. Well, we are at the just
Yeah.
over the
Sorry, we
hour.
went 3 hours, 3 minutes
There's
over.
the 3 minutes.
3 hours.
It's
Yeah.
okay. I don't think we started right on time.
Mhm.
So anyways, thank you for doing this. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So I am going to post like your links and stuff. And I don't know if
Okay.
you saw, I sent out an email the other
Oh,
day.
yeah.
Check your email.
Mhm.
Um, and I put all your links in there. Not that I have a massive audience, but I just get excited that I can
Hell
share
yeah.
your work and what you're
Yeah,
doing.
I appreciate it.
So I'll have this in my group, and then I'll put a private YouTube thing and send it so you can
Mm,
do whatever you want
okay.
with it as well. And I guess we can
Yeah.
go from there.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Hmm.
And I guess
Yeah.
that's it. I
Yeah.
don't have like a
An ending.
sign off
Yeah,
or
no. We'll
anything.
just always end it. And I mean, but like thank you, because obviously I wouldn't be here without the years of help. So
Well, like I said, I mean, I feel like I didn't do much. You did, you do all the work.
clearly you did though. So,
Yeah.
you know.
So I'm just really excited to have been for you letting me be like on this
Mm,
journey, and especially even now in this stage to
yeah.
um you know let me be privy to
Yeah.
it. So thank you, I do appreciate that.
Oh yeah. That's
So
awesome.
all right, well, I'll talk with you later. Take
Yeah,
care.
yeah. All right, later.
All right, bye.
Bye.